Vous êtes priés de prendre place. La session va bientôt commencer. Please take your seat. We will start very soon. Please rise for ACP anthems.
C'est votre discours. Ce matin, seulement votre discours. Vous l'avez?
D'accord, mais qui commence à parler?
C'est...
Mesdames et messieurs les ministres, mesdames et messieurs les ambassadeurs, distingués invités, mesdames et messieurs, c'est un grand honneur pour nous d'ouvrir cette session de notre Conseil des ministres. Et le programme de ce matin va porter sur 3 allocutions. Premièrement, les propos de bienvenue du secrétaire général du groupe ACP, M. Aladji Mohamed Moumini, et ensuite viendra le discours du directeur général de l'ONUDI, M. Lee Yong. Bienvenue, Monsieur le Directeur. Et ensuite, le président du Conseil des ministres prononcera le discours d'ouverture. Mais avant de passer la parole au secrétaire général du groupe ACP, je prierai l'assistance d'observer 1 minute de silence. D'abord, pour toutes les victimes de la fièvre hémorragique Ebola qui frappe une partie du continent africain, et aussi 1 minute de silence à la mémoire du président de la Zambie qui est décédé, et enfin 1 minute de silence pour la reine Fabiola qui vient aussi de décéder. Merci. Monsieur le secrétaire général, je vous cède le micro. Merci.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Excellency, Mr. Mohamed Diarra, President of Council, the Right Honorable Prime Minister of the Republic of Samoa, Honorable Trilaipa Fatialofa Dr. Sailele Maliulengwai, Honorable Ministers, Excellencies, Ambassadors, our distinguished guest, Mr. Lee Yong, Director General of UNIDO, Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, permit me to begin by expressing how deeply honored I am for the privilege of addressing this noble and august 100th session of the ACP Council of Ministers. I warmly welcome you all to ACP House, which is indeed your house. Let me also extend a warm hand of welcome to our special guest, His Excellency Mr. Lee Yong, Director General of UNIDO, who is here with us and who has graciously agreed to address Council on the topic inclusive and sustainable industrial development. Only last week, we returned from Strasbourg, France, where the 28th session of the joint ACP-EU Parliamentary Assembly and the 36th session of the ACP Parliamentary Assembly took place. It was a well-attended and successful meeting, in spite of our previous challenges in trying to arrange those meetings here in Brussels. The JPA represents an important aspect of our ACP-EU cooperation system, availing our legislators on both sides an opportunity not only to debate and exchange views, but also to pass resolutions and influence the course of cooperation and development to the benefit of our peoples. Honorable Ministers, we meet at a time of considerable challenges as well as opportunities. Many of our ACP countries are making bold efforts at consolidating democracy and the rule of law, while building robust economies that will ensure growth and prosperity in the years ahead. Peaceful and transparent elections have been held in several of our countries this year. Even in countries such as Mali and Central African Republic, where we had some political difficulties, hope is being restored. More recently, in Burkina Faso, the youth took the future into their own hands by forcing a regime change based on their convictions about the rule of constitutionalism. We continue to follow events in that country and to urge the transitional administration to ensure a smooth return to democratic rule in line with the just aspirations of the great Burkinabe people. With regard to the rest of the world, the BRICS countries are showing signs of strong recovery, particularly South Africa, which is also a much valued member of our organization. Among the advanced industrial countries, Britain and the United States continue to show strong prospects for growth. However, recovery remains slow in our Eurozone partner countries. In Iraq and Syria, the raging fires of terror and war continue to rampage across once prosperous nations. Also, the showdown between Russia and the West over Ukraine is a geopolitical challenge that does not augur well for world peace and long-term global recovery. Fallen oil and commodity prices cannot be particularly good news for some of our oil exporting countries. It is clear that bold action is needed on a global scale to restore growth and to bolster the institutions of global governance for the benefit of billions of people on our planet. Mr. President, much work remains to be done. Some of our small island states continue to be threatened by climate change, even as poverty and youth unemployment continue to exert a negative impact on the development prospects of many of our member countries. In spite of the heroic efforts at reform, some of our countries remain saddled with high levels of unsustainable debt and other fiscal challenges. In West Africa, the scourge of Ebola has exacted a severe humanitarian toll on countries such as Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone. In Nigeria and Kenya, terrorism and insurgency constitute a menace to human livelihoods as well as long-term growth and ethno-communal harmony. However, we have good cause to be optimistic that the prospects for our ACP countries remain strong. Long-term recovery will be dependent on the advanced industrial countries ensuring they take bold steps to rebalance their fiscal bases while cooperating with the BRICS and other emerging economies in boosting the institutions of global governance and ensuring an open international trading regime that works in the interests of rich and poor countries alike. Equally important is the need to rally the world community together to tackle the monster of Ebola while finding lasting solutions to the crisis between Russia and Ukraine and addressing the onslaught of the movement that calls itself the Islamic State in Syria and Iraq. Mr. President, whether it is violent conflict or terrorism, viral diseases or climate change, global challenges by their very nature require cooperation and collective action on a global scale. No one nation could solve these challenges on its own, even if that nation has the exorbitant privilege of being a hyperpower, to borrow a term first used by former French Foreign Minister Hubert Védrine. I make bold to say that our ACP-EU partnership is an important pillar of that consensus building, of that dialogue of civilizations, which is so crucial to humanity's survival in our era. Since Hugo Grotius, considered by jurists as the father of international law, Europe has prided itself in its universalism and its commitment to the ideals of the Enlightenment. Our long-standing partnership provides an opportunity to test Europe's commitment to these ideals. Together, I believe we can join the rest of the world community of nations in creating the momentum for a more prosperous, more just, and more peaceful world. The ACP has come of age. As an intergovernmental organization, we have weathered many a storm and overcome many a hurdle. We are a trusted development partner to Europe. We are widely consulted on some of the key developmental agendas that have to be tackled by the international community. In international forums, the ACP continues to speak with authority. We have made our voice to count, and we have stood up to be counted when it matters the most. Honorable ministers, like any other organization, the ACP, in its nearly 4 decades of existence, has had its triumphs as well as its tribulations. As we face a future of great uncertainty, we recognize the need to reposition our organization as a more credible and more effective player on the global arena. As everybody knows, Europe's 2009 Lisbon Treaty makes no express reference to the ACP-EU partnership. It seems evident to us that the emerging new Europe does not necessarily wish to accord us the status of a privileged partner that we once took for granted. And as the recent European elections have shown, the political pendulum is swinging decidedly to the right. Aid fatigue is creeping in. The Eurozone countries are facing an unprecedented fiscal crisis of their own. Growth has remained painfully slow. In those circumstances, Europe's generosity has been remarkable, but it is a generosity that we can no longer take for granted. It was in awareness of these new realities that the Ambassadorial Working Group on Future Perspectives was set up. The Eminent Persons Group, EPG, under the chairmanship of former Nigerian President Chief Olusegun Obasanjo, was also set up under a resolution of the 7th Summit of the ACP to pull together the wisdom of some of our best statesmen and women and to forge a brave new future for the ACP. The EPG has been at work from last year and all of this year. Consultations have been held in all 6 regions of the ACP. The EPG has also met with European officials at the highest levels. The drafting committee of the EPG has put together an interim report which will be presented to this Council as a prelude to presenting the final report during the next summit of heads of state and government when it does take place. Honorable Ministers, I was present at almost all of the EPG's regional consultations. I can say without any fear of contradiction that if the ACP did not exist, it would have been necessary to invent it. I felt encouraged by the realization that most of our peoples and stakeholders value the ACP as a coalition of the world's poor, as the moral conscience of a world that is sometimes dominated by might rather than right, and by force rather than the precepts of law and international morality. The thinking that has infused both the working group and the EPG have been premised on the need to revitalize, reconfigure, and reposition the ACP group into an operationally effective international organization in order to better serve the needs and ambitions of its member states. Central to all these questions is where we should be heading after the expiry of the Cotonou Agreement in 2020. One thing on which we are all agreed is that it definitely can no longer be business as usual. According to an ancient African saying, a wise man will not set sail on someone else's star. As we seek to reinvent the ACP, it seems evident to me that we can be most effective when we do not repeat what other institutions are already doing, but when we focus on what we do best in those niche areas that leverage on our highest comparative advantage. This would require focusing on our core competences and repositioning the Secretariat as a knowledge institution that does more than just convening meetings. It will require strengthening the Secretariat and mobilizing more substantial resources than currently obtains. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it would be remiss of me if I did not say that our relations with Europe have not always been without their frictions. One of the sore points is obviously the slow progress towards finalization of the EPA negotiations. While the Caribbean region has already finalized its EPA, it is still saddled with the challenges of implementation. An EPA agreement has been reached with West Africa, awaiting ratification by the respective parliaments. Negotiations with East Africa and Southern Africa have reached an advanced stage, while those with the Pacific Islands and with Central Africa are still ongoing. We continue to hope that the EU will show greater flexibility and understanding so that all our regions will reach an agreement that they are judged to be fair, equitable, and just. Your Excellencies, we remain persuaded that there is a future for the ACP. We also believe that the Europe and ACP will continue to need each other in the foreseeable future. Europe has technology and skills. The ACP has an abundance of natural resource endowments. There is therefore a basis for interdependence and a mutuality of interest. As principal donor to the ACP, the EU has access to 79 member countries within its sphere of diplomatic and geopolitical influence, allowing Europe to wield what Harvard political scientist Joseph Nye terms soft power, a form of influence which he famously elaborated as the most effective form of power in our 21st century. Honorable ministers, I need to remind us that we have a busy schedule ahead. Apart from what I would term the routine issues of trade and commodities and the annual budget, a major topic on your agenda is the appointment of a new Secretary General who will be succeeding my humble self for the years 2015 to 2020. As you probably suspect, the Bureau has met with the candidates and will be presenting its report to Council in due course. The appointment is to be made from a shortlist of three highly qualified candidates from the Caribbean region, whose turn it is to hold the position according to our long-standing rotational system. The coming years will be of crucial importance for the future of the ACP. I am sure you will bring together your collective wisdom in choosing the right candidate who will steer the affairs of our organization with boldness, with wisdom, and with sagacity. Tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m., indeed we are expected to be convened there at 8 a.m., we will be having an informal breakfast meeting at the Palais de Beaux-Arts. We have invited some high European officials to this breakfast meeting, notably newly appointed High Representative of the European Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Madame Federica Mogherini, and the new Development Commissioner, Mr. Neven Mimica. They will be addressing us, to be followed by an informal exchange of views. This will provide us with an opportunity to be briefed on the emerging thinking of the Jean-Claude Juncker's administration and their approach and policy orientation towards our long-standing ACP partnership. A major highlight of our meeting is the ceremony of the signing of National Indicative Programs, NIPs, with some member countries. This will enshrine into law a substantial commitment of financial resources by the EU under the 11th EDF financing cycle. Mr. President, honorable ministers, how time flies. Only 20 months ago, I was appointed by this august body to complete the term of my illustrious predecessor and compatriot, Dr. Mohamed Ibn Chambers, when he was appointed African Union and United Nations Joint Special Representative for Darfur and head of the AU-UN hybrid operation in Darfur. He has since moved on and is now the UN Secretary General's representative for West Africa. You gave me the opportunity to serve our organization, the ACP Group. I have in the period deployed my best endeavors and brought to bear whatever leverages are at my disposal. It is certainly not for me to judge whether I have succeeded and to what extent. It is for you to judge and those who will come after me. To be sure, there have been some mistakes. Perfection belongs only to the Almighty Creator. For my part, I can only say this: I did my duties with a clear conscience, and I did not betray that which destiny and your good selves had entrusted to my care. Allow me, in concluding, to take this opportunity to acknowledge the support that I have received from the Secretariat staff when I took over the leadership of this organization, particularly my Assistant Secretary Generals. Among the Ashanti people of my country, Ghana, there is a saying that when a king has good counselors, his reign is peaceful. I certainly enjoyed the wise counsel of my colleagues and the staff, which went to making my task easier than it could possibly have been. Being part of the establishment, however, gave me a better appreciation of the important role of the Secretariat in supporting and facilitating the work of all the political organs of the ACP under often difficult administrative and financial constraints. Mr. President, honorable ministers, it is sometimes very easy to forget that all the demands that we make on our Secretariat, all the work of catering to an organization of 79 member countries with a population of nearly 1 billion people is being done by less than 100 people. The support staff and secretaries comprise more than half of that staff strength, leaving less than 40 people who actually do all the policy analytic work that keeps the wheel turning. Contrast this with the European Commission, which has a staff strength of over 3,000. We run a shoestring budget, even by the level of our comparators, such as the Organisation Internationale de la Francophonie and the Commonwealth of Nations. Your Excellencies, it may surprise you to know that throughout this year, we had virtually no budget for missions, a fact that meant the ACP could not be represented at some of the most important international meetings. This has been a particularly difficult and painful experience. It's like sending a farmer to the field at the crucial planting season while denying him the necessary tools to get down to business. I say this without rancor, of course. I only hope that my predecessor will receive better resourcing than we have had. In this connection, I wish to acknowledge with thanks the generous monetary donations to the Secretariat received from the governments of the Republic of Equatorial Guinea and the Republic of Angola. Our people say that if you climb a tree up, you must climb down the same tree. As I bid farewell to this august body, let me express my gratitude to all of you for your forbearance, guidance, and support. I am particularly grateful to all the staff for their unstinting sacrifices, loyalty, and commitment. That we managed to achieve what we were able to do under sometimes dire circumstances is due largely to the support, diligence, and sacrifice of the staff. I am also grateful to the Committee of Ambassadors and its successive chairman in the persons of His Excellency Mr. Samuel O. Atlule, Ambassador of Botswana, His Excellency Fatumanava Dr. Pao Luteru, Ambassador of Samoa, His Excellency Dr. Diodorus B. Kamala, Ambassador of the United Republic of Tanzania, and lastly, but certainly not the least, Dr. Usman Silla, Ambassador of the Republic of Guinea. These astute diplomats provided the much-needed guidance and leadership, and I profited from their wisdom. Equally, I acknowledge the great work that was accomplished under various chairpersons of subcommittees and working groups. Without their hard work and sacrifice, we could not have achieved the level of success that was accomplished. I have enjoyed the friendship of many outstanding personalities, indeed too many I cannot specify or mention, that I worked with in these few months, and I owe them special gratitude. They taught me to appreciate better what the iconic and legendary leader of our time, the great Madiba, Nelson Mandela, had said while reflecting on the qualities of leadership. He said, and I quote, "A good leader can engage in a debate frankly and thoroughly, knowing that at the end, he and the other side must be closer, and thus emerge stronger. You don't have that idea when you are arrogant, superficial, and uninformed," unquote. Mr. President, honorable ministers, excellencies, ambassadors, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, let me reiterate my words of welcome and profound gratitude for your presence here, and also wish you a fulfilling and productive 100th session of the Council of Ministers. I thank you for your kind attention.
Merci, Monsieur le Secrétaire général, pour ce discours pathétique. Et maintenant, je passe la parole à notre invité spécial, le directeur général de l'ONUDI, Monsieur Lee Young.
Your Excellency, Mr. President of ACP Council of Ministers, Honorable State Leader and the Ministers, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to express my sincere thanks for inviting me as a special guest on the occasion of the landmark 100th session of the ACP Council of Ministers. I'm highly honored to have been invited to participate in your deliberations, and in particular to discuss the issue of the inclusive and sustainable industrial development of ACP nations with you. Please allow me to remind you how inclusive and sustainable industrial development, which has increasingly become known by its acronym of ISID, has gained international momentum, and why it is so important for the prosperity of the ACP members. Last year, on the 2nd of December 2013, in Lima, Peru, 170 member states of UNIDO, including ACP countries and the European Union, unanimously approved Lima Declaration, which calls for inclusive and sustainable industrial development. This declaration recognizes very clearly that industrialization is central, is a key to inclusive and sustainable development for all the nations. First of all, it is a historical fact that industrialization supports inclusive development. It can create millions of jobs, especially qualified and decent jobs, in rural areas where the agriculture is predominant. People can add value to their produce and generate more income from their work by integrating into local, regional, and global value chains. In many countries where population are moving to cities, industry absorbs large number of workers in modern and skilled jobs. In countries endowed with important mineral resources, local processing can create jobs for the masses of young people and women looking for a better life, better job. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let me remind you of the words like value addition, processing, manufacturing, mere synonyms of industrialization. It is actually industrialization and are the engine of the economic transformation that is needed in many ACP countries. For example, according to our industrial statistics, industrialized countries add 70% of the value to their products. And by contrast, many ACP countries add only 0.7 or less value of their products. This gap represents the difference between poverty and prosperity, between the different industrial levels. Recent UNIDO research also shows how industrial development is intrinsically correlated to the social improvements such as poverty reduction, health, education, and food security. Another important issue that is addressed by the concept of ISID is the environmental sustainability of industrial development. We need to move away from the traditional models of industrialization, which have been seriously affect on the environment and the health of the people. Indeed, statistical evidence shows that the pollution is the leading cause of death in lower middle income countries. That is why we urgently need to move towards models based on cleaner production and a more efficient use of resources and energy, which will help us to achieve our economic growth objectives while preserving our environment, as well as our climate. The good news is that today's world, producing without polluting, producing without wasting natural resources and energy, makes business sense. It's really happened. The adoption of Lima Declaration for Inclusive and Sustainable Industrial Development is an important landmark in the global agenda. For the first time, the spectacular industrial successes of many countries in the last 40 years or so, particularly in Asia, have been recognized. The Lima Declaration also reaffirmed the position of UNIDO as a central coordinator of industrial development within the UN system, the only organization called United Nations Industrial Development Organization in the UN family. And we do this through technical cooperation, action-oriented research, and policy advisory services, supporting our member states to achieve compliance with international standards and via our convening role. And for ISID to be achieved, appropriate policies are as essential as partnerships. At the international level, it is important that ISID be included in the major development frameworks, particularly in the post-2015 development agenda, that will guide the international development in the coming decade. I'm very happy and pleased to report to all of you that thanks to the strong and the solid support of ACP countries, ISID has already been recognized as one of the 17 substantial sustainable development goals proposed by the UN Open Working Group and confirmed last week by the UN Secretary General in his synthesis report of the post-2015 processes entitled Road to the Dignity by 2030. Indeed, Goal 9 is specifically devoted to building resilient infrastructure, promoting inclusive and sustainable industrialization, and fostering innovation. This is a major step forward in the international recognition of the importance of ISID. The international disclosure will now move towards the means of implementation of SDG. It will review the financing modalities for the implementation of the SDGs and the respective roles of the public and private sector in this context, as well as the importance of national ownership of the development process and the need to ensure an effective policy space for the national governments. Since the primary implementation role will remain with the governments, we recommend that ACP countries adopt ISID as a national policy objective. To monitor the implementation of SDGs, the Global Sustainable Development Report is under preparation. We present the first prototype to our member states 2 weeks ago in Vienna. For your information, UNIDO will lead the coordination of the chapter on the economic growth, inclusive and sustainable industrial development, and sustainable consumption and production in the next edition of the report. I would also like to share with you that on 28th and 29th of November, UNIDO facilitated a meeting of Group of 77 plus China on governance of natural resources and industrialization in Tarija, in Bolivia, together with Economic Commission of Latin America and the Caribbean and Africa, ECA. More than 30 ministers of industry or the representatives supported ISID and the role of UNIDO in promoting and implementing of the industrialization agenda. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the partnerships will be indispensable to accelerate implementation of ISID. To support this process, we have launched 2 ISID fora this year. The first one in June served to identify the interest of member states, and the second one in early November mobilizes all partners to support ISID in 2 pilot countries, Ethiopia and Senegal. Under the leadership of Her Excellency Mr. Hailemariam Desalegn, Prime Minister of Ethiopia, and Her Excellency Mr. Mohamed Dione, the Prime Minister of Senegal, 450 participants from more than 90 countries, financial institutions, and development partners committed to support the industrial development of those 2 pilot countries. At this occasion, we are highly honored by the presence of the UN Secretary General, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, as well as the new European Commissioner for International Cooperation and Development, Mr. Niven Mimica, and the Secretary General of the ACP Secretariat, His Excellency Mr. Ali Mohammed Mimini, whom actually I would like to personally thank for his participation, his great commitment to our partnership. As His Excellency stated on the occasion, and I quote, "In building the competitiveness of our industries and facilitating ACP brands access to the regional and international markets, UNIDO is regarded by ACP Secretariat as a strategic ally," unquote. In the same profound spirit of partnership embraced at the recently concluded 3rd International Conference on Small Island Developing State in Samoa through the Samoa Pathway Outcome document and the SID Action Platform, allow me to say a few words on the ACP-UNIDO strategic partnership and on how we can work together to support the implementation of ISID in ACP nations. First of all, ACP and the UNIDO already have solid strategic framework through the Memorandum of Understanding that was approved in March 2011, and through the relationship agreement that was signed in presence of all UNIDO member states in November 2011 in Vienna. On the basis of these agreements, ACP and the UNIDO have intensified their policy interaction and practical cooperation. A spectacular example was a strong policy mobilization of the ACP to support the UN Secretary General's Sustainable Energy for All initiative led by UNIDO. The great support of the ACP at the highest level in Sipup Summit have been critical for the international success of the initiative. An example of practical ACP-UNIDO cooperation is the development of pilot program entitled Investment Monitoring Platform, in short as IMP, funded under the intra-ACP envelope of the 9th European Development Fund with the support of other donors. This program aimed to the following target: manage the impact of foreign direct investment for development, combine investment promotion with private sector development, and provide advisory services for evidence-based investment decisions, and design or reform policies that attract quality investment, enhance the coordination among private and private sector institutions. This program has reinforced the capacity of investment promotion agencies and national statistics offices in 20 African countries, which have been trained on methodologies to assess the private sector at the country level. With this methodology, they can deliver a radiography of the private sector in Africa with data on more than 7,000 enterprises in 20 countries. This is a unique information that can strategically be utilized to support private sector development in Africa. Beyond Africa, this program was originally approved by the Committee of Ambassadors on the condition that after pilot phase, it will be extended to all ACP countries. And the independent evaluation has documented the success of this joint ACP UNIDO program, opening the possibility to extend it to all the ACP countries. A new extension phase could then be designed as an integrated investment and a private sector monitoring platform with a strong emphasis on the ACP capacity building and the intra-ACP analysis, knowledge transfer, and the South-South cooperation. It could then become a strategic tool owned by ACP for the implementation of the new private sector development program. Again, on the private sector, UNIDO has accompanied all the ACP EU business fora, the EU-Africa business fora in Nairobi, Tripoli, and Brussels, and the CARIFORUM EU Business Forum in London, to Pacific EU Business Forum in Port Vila. On all these occasions, we have worked closely with the ACP countries and their private sector to define a supportive development agenda. We have then integrated all ACP EU Business Forum recommendations in our approaches, in our operations. We also recently contributed to the consultation on the ACP private sector strategy as well as on commodities, stressing that every effort should be made to reduce the high dependency of many ACP countries on a few commodities, and to move towards industrialization and economic diversification. This implies moving from the agriculture to agro-industry and agribusiness. It also means that to build up local industry that can process raw materials and advanced manufacturing, which means creating more jobs. Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, and now allow me to report briefly on how far ISID is anchored in ACP policy and share with you some information on how we are supporting its implementation in your countries and the regions. Let me turn to Africa. The strategy for accelerated industrial development of Africa, we in short IDA, prepared with UNIDO's expertise, is solidly anchored as a key priority for the Agenda 2063, as well as of the Joint African Union strategy. On the ground, we are supporting almost all African countries through the country, regional, and continental approaches to deal with issues related to technical barriers to trade and sanitary and phytosanitary measures, as well as to creating a culture of quality production in SME. For example, we have worked in partnership with ECOWAS, UEMOA, and ECA and their member states to establish fully operational regional quality system, ensuring that exports are made in compliance with international norms and standards. In addition, we also have supported all African region economic communities at their request to reinforce the development component of their respective economic partnership agreements with industrial policies and the programs. As a consequence, most EPA development programs now include industrial approaches that can boost the local private sector and employment. We hope that these policies and the programs will now be implemented very soon in all regions of Africa. Let me turn to the Caribbean. A high priority is being given to the private sector development. Climate change, renewable energy, and energy efficiency value addition in agribusiness value chains, trade, and tourism. The Carrefour EU Business Forum in London in 2012, to which UNIDO contributed, clearly articulated the need for more innovation and a reliable market and the private sector information, access to market through the quality and the improving agro-processing and the creative industries. To support the region, UNIDO has prepared the regional competitiveness and the innovation program that was financed in the 10th European Development Fund and implemented by regional institutions. To drive the sustainability, we are also establishing Caribbean Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency that will reinforce the capacity of the region, its member states, to deal with energy issues. A regional program on the better management of the persistent organic pollutants is also under preparation. Other initiatives that take place at the country level could be replicated in the region. For example, we have established a National Clean Production Center in Cuba and are currently setting up a resource-efficient, low-carbon and circular industrial partnership platform for catalyzing eco-innovation and entrepreneurship in Barbados, with similar efforts in the discussion with the OECS Secretariat and the Eastern Caribbean states. In Haiti, we have established a fully operational bureau of norms and standards that support high-quality local production and quality trade. A program to support the development of the creative industry village is also under preparation. In the Pacific, the second Pacific EU Business Forum held in Vanuatu in June this year requested stronger engagement of UNIDO to support the private sector in the region. We are currently working with complementary approaches. We are mapping out innovation in the region as a part of the Pacific EU project PaceNet Plus to design a strategy to ensure the innovation will benefit private sector and transform into tangible social economic benefits. In response to the climate change and energy challenges, we are also establishing a Pacific Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency, like in other ACP regions. Together with the Secretariat of the Pacific Community and the Pacific Islands Forum Fishery Agency, we have developed a regional project to support SME in the fishery sector that was validated at the Pacific EU Business Forum held earlier this year in Vanuatu, and also at the recent SIDS conference in Samoa. This intra-ACP program is planned to be implemented in the Pacific in the first phase and then be extended to all ACP concerned with fishery in the second phase. We are also considering the support the region with value chains and compliance issues related to some specific commodities like fish and kava. Interregionally, in all these three ACP regions of Africa, the Caribbean and the Pacific, UNIDO is supporting interventions related to quality and value chain development. In view of the private sector commodities strategy, we are planning to support value addition in specific value chains. For example, the intervention on the cashew nut has been prepared within small farmers, big business partnership that crosses GIZ, SMV, and the UNIDO. Also, on the inter-regional level, we are identifying and remediating industrially polluted hotspots throughout the world, together with our partner, the Blacksmith Institute. More than 1,000 hotspots have been identified globally. Many critical issues have been addressed, such as unsafe recycling of used lead-acid batteries. We can promote joint efforts in cleaning up these hazards with various partners, as well as supporting other activities in the framework of the Stockholm Minamata and the Montreal Conventions. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, regarding EU-UNIDO partnership, I would also like to mention that the excellent partnership that we have established with the European Commission since our relationship agreement of 1993. In close consultation and at the request of many ACP countries, we have developed with the EC a solid cooperation for implementing ISRD in more than 100 countries around the world. Recently, Mr. Nivin Mimicha, the new Commissioner of International Cooperation and Development, who participated in UNIDO's ISRD Forum on November 4th, stated very clearly the private sector's potential to contribute to the poverty reduction and the sustainable development is huge. I very much count on a strong and effective working relationship with UNIDO to help us harness that potential to the full. For more impact on the ground, we are developing new instruments. For example, beyond the traditional development assistance, industrial cooperation is a key tool for sharing knowledge and technology and mobilizing private sector development to support ACP economies. This is why we will sign this afternoon a roadmap for industrial cooperation with SMEs, with the Director General for Industry and Entrepreneurship of the European Commission, now entitled DG Grow. On the basis of this framework, we aimed to stimulate knowledge and technology transfer and as well as increase the flow of the European investment to ACP countries. Ladies and gentlemen, to conclude, I would like to reiterate how the UNIDO is committed to our cooperation. I'm glad to see that our ACP-UNIDO cooperation has intensified over the years, and I really hope this trend will continue. The cooperation between UNIDO and the ACP nations is essential to achieve the promise of inclusive and sustainable industrial development and to create conditions for achieving prosperity and sustainability for all, and especially the most valuable in the post-2015 era. Together with partners, we will feel long journey shorter. Together with partners, we will bring changes quicker. I wish you all fruitful deliberations in this historic 100th session of the ACP Council of Ministers. Thank you so much for your attention and also invitation. Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur le Directeur Général.
Vu le temps, vous pouvez laisser une ou deux questions.
Est-ce que, profitant de l'occasion, un ou deux collègues ont quelques clarifications à demander au secrétaire général, au directeur général de l'ONUDI? Profitons de l'occasion. En tout cas, il est prêt à répondre à une ou à deux questions.
Ce n'est pas le cas.
Alors, je pense que le discours a été parfait.
Merci.
Et la coopération est normale, donc il n'y a pas de questions.
Merci.
Merci. Excellences, Monsieur le Premier ministre de Samoa, Mesdames et Messieurs les ministres, Monsieur Lee Young, directeur général de l'ONUDI, notre invité spécial, Monsieur Mohamed Moumini, secrétaire général du groupe ACP, Excellences, honorables invités, Mesdames et Messieurs, permettez-moi tout d'abord de vous transmettre les salutations fraternelles de son Excellence Professeur Alpha Condé, président de la République de Guinée, ainsi que celle du gouvernement et de l'ensemble du peuple guinéen. je voudrais aussi dire combien je suis heureux d'être parmi vous ici aujourd'hui. En effet, c'est pour moi un honneur et un privilège de présider les travaux de cette auguste assemblée réunie à la maison ACP à l'occasion de la 100e session du Conseil des ministres. D'après mon humble expérience, le mois de décembre n'est pas toujours la période la plus appropriée pour tenir une réunion internationale. Votre présence ici en ce jour, en dépit des affaires d'État pressantes qui vous occupent dans vos pays respectifs, témoigne de l'importance que vous accordez à la famille des nations ACP en général et à cette session ministérielle en particulier. La présente session est la 100e du Conseil des ministres ACP. Ce chiffre revêt une importance aussi bien dans la vie des personnes que dans celle des nations ou des organisations internationales. Au fil des décennies, nous avons appris à mieux nous connaître. Nous avons mis en place des procédures et des normes qui ont résisté à l'épreuve du temps. Mesdames et messieurs les ministres, le groupe ACP a gagné en maturité. Il ne peut plus se définir comme une organisation à la recherche d'une mission. Au contraire, il est devenu un acteur de plus en plus important de la scène mondiale qui est en quête de nouveaux territoires et d'un mandat toujours renforcé, plus clairement défini et plus ciblé. Notre identité et nos actions ne font plus aucun doute. Nous sommes une organisation internationale unie par une expérience commune et un sens commun de la destinée et du but collectif sur la scène mondiale. À l'évidence, certains de nos pays sont grands, d'autres sont moins, et beaucoup d'autres encore sont relativement petits. Un bon nombre de nos pays sont enclavés, tandis que d'autres figurent parmi les petits États insulaires. Mais en dépit de ces différences, nous demeurons unis par un lien commun et une fraternité partagée. Comme dit un ancien proverbe africain, une famille, c'est comme une forêt. Vue de l'extérieur, elle est dense. Mais à l'intérieur, on s'aperçoit que chaque arbre a sa place. Selon le droit international, toutes les nations sont égales. Et égales devant Dieu, le Créateur tout-puissant du ciel et de la terre. Tout autant que nous sommes petits ou grands pays, nous avons en partage l'expérience commune de la marginalité et de la vulnérabilité au niveau mondial. Nous sommes tous unis par notre attachement à la solidarité, à la fraternité des nations, à un monde régi par le droit et par les normes internationales de justice et d'équité. Excellences, je demeure convaincu que l'unité et la solidarité sont les seuls moyens par lesquels des pays en développement comme les nôtres peuvent promouvoir leurs intérêts communs et les valeurs qui leur sont chères. Dans un monde plus que jamais intégré du fait de la mondialisation et de la libéralisation des échanges, des capitaux et des marchés, une tendance au recul de l'internationalisme et des actions collectives au niveau mondial semble se dessiner. La légitimité des principales institutions internationales, de la gouvernance mondiale est de plus en plus remise en cause. Et pourtant, l'histoire nous enseigne que tous les dangers liés à l'ordre mondial ont été aggravés par l'absence d'un leadership international et d'un engagement en faveur d'une action collective à l'échelle mondiale. C'est la raison pour laquelle la réussite du groupe revêt tant d'importance pour l'avenir de notre humanité commune. Le groupe ACP compte 79 pays qui totalisent une population d'environ 1 milliard de personnes. Nous représentons une partie importante de la famille des nations et du point de vue des pays pauvres et vulnérables, nous constituons la majorité morale. Non seulement nous comptons, mais nous devons également continuer à faire entendre notre voix dans le concert des nations. Mesdames et messieurs les ministres, notre réunion se tient à un moment particulièrement difficile. Au moment où je m'adresse à vous, le fléau Ebola fait des ravages dans certains de nos pays en Afrique de l'Ouest. Les plus durement touchés étant mon pays, la République de Guinée, et ses voisins, la Sierra Leone et le Libéria. En fait, tous les pays de la Mano-River Union ont ressenti d'une manière ou d'une autre l'impact de cette épidémie redoutable. Excellence, la maladie à virus Ebola est à la fois étrange et étrangère. La grande civilisation malinké, de chez moi bien sûr, qui remonte aux temps anciens, a le sens de la continuité et de la mémoire collective qui ont été transmises par nos griots, poètes et historiens. Nos anciennes et fières populations n'avaient jamais connu de maladie aux symptômes semblables à ceux d'Ebola. Comme chacun le sait, les premiers cas de cette maladie ont été signalés dès septembre 1976 dans une zone rurale en République démocratique du Congo. La maladie était, sans aucun doute, inconnue dans nos savanes ancestrales d'Afrique de l'Ouest. Selon certains experts, le virus Ebola serait apparu dans notre région vers la fin de l'année 2013, mais n'a pas été diagnostiqué rapidement ou même reconnu comme une dangereuse épidémie, étant donné qu'il s'agissait d'un phénomène complètement étrange à nos populations. C'est seulement en mars 2014 que nous avons pris conscience que la Guinée était confrontée à un véritable fléau, avec des cas signalés dans les préfectures au sud du pays, notamment à Massanta et à Guékédou. Depuis lors, plus de 2000 cas cliniques ont été recensés, dont environ plus de 1260 décès. Les zones névralgiques se situent autour de notre capitale et dans les régions du sud-ouest, frontalières au Libéria et à la Sierra Leone. Sur les 34 préfectures que compte notre pays, environ 10 n'ont fait état d'aucun cas d'Ebola. Toutefois, je suis heureux d'annoncer que grâce aux mesures décisives du gouvernement guinéen et à l'appui de la communauté internationale, le nombre de cas hebdomadaires rapportés a continué d'enregistrer une baisse en fin novembre. Nous avons accompli, et je m'en félicite, des progrès considérables vers la réalisation de nos objectifs concernant la lutte contre l'épidémie. Ainsi, plus de 70% des cas déclarés font l'objet de mesures d'isolement, tandis que 80% des équipes chargées des inhumations sont actives sur le terrain. Excellence, nos économies sont confrontées à la fuite des capitaux. Les investisseurs ne devraient, en principe, pas revenir avant la fin de l'épidémie. Des emplois sont perdus. Le capital social s'érode. Les familles et les communautés sont traumatisées de façon indicible. Tout au long de ces épreuves et tribulations, nous avons bénéficié de l'appui encourageant de la communauté internationale et notamment de nombreux pays frères ACP. À cette occasion d'ailleurs, je remercie très sincèrement le Timor-Leste qui a pensé à apporter un appui substantiel aux trois pays, la Sierra Leone, le Libéria et la République de Guinée. Bien sûr, d'autres pays ont fait la même chose. Le coordonnateur de l'Union européenne pour la lutte contre Ebola, le commissaire européen à l'aide humanitaire et à la gestion des crises, M. Christos Stylianides, et celui de la coopération internationale et du développement, M. Mimicha, se sont rendus dans notre région entre les mois de novembre et décembre pour constater par eux-mêmes la situation sur le terrain. Nous accueillons avec beaucoup d'optimisme l'annonce de nos partenaires européens de débloquer 1,1 milliard d'euros pour soutenir la lutte contre Ebola dans les pays durement frappés. En outre, nous avons eu l'honneur de recevoir successivement ces derniers temps plusieurs hautes personnalités. La présidente de l'Union africaine, Mme Dlamini Zuma, Dr Kaberuka, président de la Banque africaine de développement, le président Carlos Lopez de la Commission économique pour l'Afrique, les Nations Unies, le directeur général de l'USAID, M. Shah, Également le président de la Banque mondiale, Dr Jim Kim, qui a fait aussi le déplacement. Toujours dans ce registre, le président français, François Hollande, a effectué une visite de solidarité en Guinée, promettant à l'occasion une aide d'un montant de 100 millions d'euros pour aider à contenir la maladie et en plus d'autres mesures pratiques destinées à renforcer notre système sanitaire. Je ne saurais terminer ce chapitre sans parler aussi de la visite de certains chefs d'État africains de la sous-région, notamment Mme Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, présidente du Libéria, Dr Bai Koroma de la Sierra Leone, Mahamani Dramani du Ghana, Ibrahim Boubacar Keita Ibeka de la République du Mali. Plusieurs organismes ont fait et fourni des ressources financières et humaines pour nous aider à vaincre cette terrible maladie. Nous ne pouvons que leur exprimer notre gratitude la plus profonde et la plus sincère. Toutefois, je me dois de souligner qu'une action collective d'une plus grande envergure est nécessaire si nous voulons déplacer les montagnes et sécuriser la vie et les moyens d'existence de millions de personnes en Afrique de l'Ouest. Mesdames et messieurs les ministres, le virus comme Ebola ignore les frontières. Dans un monde rendu plus petit par les nouvelles technologies de communication et les forces de la mobilisation, la mondialisation, j'allais dire, les maladies peuvent facilement se jouer des frontières. Par conséquent, il est dans notre intérêt collectif d'aider les pays frappés par cette épidémie virale à élaborer des mécanismes de lutte efficaces. Il n'est pas surprenant que les pays les plus touchés comptent parmi les plus pauvres au monde. Le Libéria et la Sierra Leone ont été secoués par une guerre violente et des troubles civils. La Guinée a été elle-même confrontée à des défis pendant sa difficile transition politique. Lorsque les armes se sont tues, nous nous sommes tous réjouis. Le retour à la démocratie et à l'état de droit augurait d'une nouvelle ère en redonnant espoir à nos populations. Avant l'apparition de l'épidémie à virus Ebola, l'Afrique de l'Ouest était la sous-région du continent africain qui enregistrait la croissance la plus rapide. Selon les statistiques de la Banque africaine de développement, la croissance du PIB au sein de la CEDEAO a atteint 6,9% en 2012, 6,7% en 2013. En dépit de l'épidémie, elle devrait passer à 7,2% en 2014. Il ne fait aucun doute que les perspectives auraient pu être bien meilleures si nous n'avions pas été aux prises avec cette épidémie redoutable. Honorables invités, mesdames et messieurs, la maladie à virus Ebola concerne notre humanité commune et inséparable. Nous continuons à lancer un appel à vous pour nous venir en aide. Nous invitons également nos partenaires européens et la communauté internationale à appuyer les efforts héroïques que nous déployons pour combattre ce fléau et redonner espoir à nos populations. À cet égard, l'appui visant à rendre nos systèmes de santé plus résistants à l'avenir revêt une importance capitale. Il est tout aussi indispensable de réhabiliter nos infrastructures sociales et économiques et de renforcer les budgets nationaux afin de mettre en place une protection sociale efficace et des systèmes de santé viables à long terme. Selon un adage zoulou, peuple originaire d'Afrique du Sud, un mal mystérieux ne se traite jamais avec des médicaments sucrés. Nous, en Guinée, à l'instar d'ailleurs des autres pays touchés, sommes bien conscients des choix difficiles que nous devons opérer. Nous devons faire preuve d'une rigueur accrue dans nos systèmes de dépenses, de façon à ce que les ressources soient mobilisées en faveur des domaines qui en ont le plus besoin et des secteurs qui produiront le plus grand impact en termes d'amélioration des moyens d'existence. Nous sommes tous appelés à faire des sacrifices et il appartient aux dirigeants que nous sommes de montrer l'exemple. Mesdames et messieurs les ministres, nous avons devant nous un programme de travail bien chargé. En effet, outre les questions liées au commerce et aux produits de base, cette 100e session du Conseil doit examiner le budget du secrétariat ACP pour l'exercice 2015. désigner le nouveau secrétaire général qui présidera aux destinées de l'organisation pendant les 5 prochaines années et entendre le rapport d'étape du groupe d'éminentes personnalités qui a été mis sur pied pour nous aider à bâtir un nouvel avenir ambitieux. Il est inutile de rappeler que le groupe ACP a besoin d'un leadership pour conduire ses activités et préparer son avenir après 2020. Une nouvelle équipe de la Commission européenne a été mise en place sous la présidence de M. Jean-Claude Juncker. Comme il ressort clairement des résultats des élections législatives européennes tenues cet été, nous devrons composer avec une nouvelle Europe résolument située au centre droit. Nous ne pouvons pas, dès lors, continuer à agir comme si de rien n'était. La lassitude à l'égard de l'aide est un fait dans l'ordre économique international qui se dessine. Il est donc important que le groupe ACP se repositionne comme une organisation internationale crédible et capable d'optimiser sa capacité à mobiliser des ressources auprès de divers partenaires. C'est pourquoi le choix de la personne qui deviendra le prochain secrétaire général est une question cruciale. Comme dit un proverbe ashanti au Ghana, une armée de moutons menée par un lion est capable de mettre en déroute une armée de lions menée par un mouton. Nous avons grandement besoin d'un lion ou d'une lionne pour diriger avec ambition, courage et sagacité notre organisation dans les années à venir. Permettez-moi d'utiliser ici mes bons offices en tant que président du Conseil pour exprimer ma préoccupation concernant le budget et la situation financière de nos secrétariats. D'après les rapports que nous avons reçus au mois de novembre, environ 25 États membres n'ont effectué aucun paiement au titre de leurs contributions respectives au budget 2014 du secrétariat, tandis que 28 États membres seulement se sont acquittés intégralement de cette obligation pour le même exercice. Les arriérés dus par 23 États s'élèvent au total à 1,4 million d'euros. Enfin, 10 États sont sous sanction pour défaut de paiement pendant au moins une année entière. Mesdames et Messieurs les ministres, vous conviendrez avec moi que cette situation est intenable. Nous ne pouvons pas exiger autant d'efforts de notre secrétariat tout en le privant des moyens nécessaires à la réalisation de sa mission. Nous avons été fortement encouragés par les présidents Teodoro Obiang Nguema Bazoko de Guinée équatoriale et José Eduardo dos Santos d'Angola, qui ont tous deux fait don de sommes considérables à notre organisation, en plus de leur contribution statutaire. Ces fonds ont servi à appuyer le fonctionnement du secrétariat et les travaux du groupe d'éminentes personnalités ACP. Nous exprimons notre profonde gratitude à ces deux pays. Je voudrais saisir cette occasion pour exhorter certains de nos États membres qui jouissent d'une situation financière plus robuste à suivre l'exemple de l'Angola et de la Guinée équatoriale. Avant de clore mon propos, permettez-moi d'exprimer la joie qui nous anime d'accueillir en notre sein Son Excellence M. Lee Young, directeur général de l'ONUDI. L'organisation qu'il dirige est un partenaire respecté et privilégié du groupe ACP. Nous avons conclu avec l'ONUDI un protocole d'accord qui fonctionne très bien pour les deux organisations. Nous espérons poursuivre cette fructueuse coopération pendant encore de nombreuses années. Enfin, qu'il me soit permis d'adresser mes remerciements au président du comité des ambassadeurs ACP, mon compatriote l'ambassadeur Dr Ousmane Silla, et à ses collègues pour tout le travail préparatoire qui a été accompli afin que la présente session du Conseil des ministres se déroule dans de bonnes conditions et soit couronnée de succès. Nous adressons notre profonde gratitude au secrétaire général Alhaji Mahamad Moumouni ainsi qu'au secrétariat pour l'accueil chaleureux dont nous avons fait l'objet et pour toutes les dispositions nécessaires prises en vue d'assurer le succès de nos réunions. Je note également que la présente session du Conseil des ministres est la dernière à laquelle participe Aladji Moumini avant la fin de son mandat en février prochain. Au cours de la brève période qu'il a passée à la tête de l'organisation, il a puisé dans sa riche expérience de juriste, de parlementaire et d'homme d'État pour contribuer de façon positive aux activités du secrétariat. Nous lui adressons nos remerciements pour ses services et son sacrifice inestimable en faveur de la cause ACP. C'est sur ces mots que je déclare ouverte la 100e session du Conseil des ministres ACP. Je vous remercie de votre bien aimable attention et souhaite plein succès à nos travaux.
À 15h00.
Nous allons arrêter cette cérémonie d'ouverture à présent et la session reprend à 15h pile. 15h00. Je vous remercie.